Okay, boys and girls, we're back now with an almost finished bowl, filled bowl. And I want to show you a few little tricks for finishing this off before we stop. I've got just a few spots left, but I'm hoping you can see in the video that there's a few little spots in here that were left open. I've got 1, 2 little bitty spots, and then I've got a big spot right here. And I've also got some edges that are left open, and we need to make sure the clay goes all the way to the edge. So I'm going to start with the big spots, and I'll first cut a shape that looks like it might fit.
Excuse me, staff and students, this is the final call for activity buses. Activity buses will be rolling in 1 minute.
So I cut a piece that looks like it's about the right size, lay it in its place, and then I can kind of trim it to approximately the right size. I pull it back out and then trim it to fit, and then I lay it in its place. Now, as I said, it's okay if it overlaps a little bit. If you can fit it side by side, that's perfect, but sometimes you just have to do a little bit of overlapping. Now, in the case where I have a few little spots that are left open, I just simply tear a little piece of clay off, and I'm kind of basically plugging up the holes there. I'm just pressing the clay in. Sometimes if you just press the clay together it works, but you have to make sure that you don't thin out the clay too terribly much. Now I've got most of my openings filled in. I think I've got one. You kind of have to hold your bowl like this and just look all the way around to make sure they're all filled in. I thought I had another one, but it looks like they're all filled in. I do have one little edge right here that needs to have a little bit of extra clay added to it, not very much. But as I said, you really want that clay to really go off the edge. We're going to trim it later with a knife, so I'm going to add a piece right there. Now, that is what your bowl should look like once you've got it completely filled in. The next step is to take your knife, and this is kind of a tricky stage, so you might want to wait until your clay gets a little bit dry. But you hold your hand behind the clay, and this does not have to be done real neatly, but you just want to trim off some of the extra clay so that it doesn't tear your bowl. We will trim it more neatly with a sharp knife later, but for now just kind of get rid of that extra clay that's hanging off the edge. And it's okay if it's over the edge, but we have to make sure it at least comes to the edge. Over the edge is okay, but it has to at least come to the edge. Now, I've pretty much got my bowl filled with clay, so my next step is to take my fingers and gently, very gently, press all the clay together. And it's not really necessary to score this clay because it's very soft clay, but I'm holding the outside edge so that I'm holding the clay in place, and with my thumb, I'm pressing the clay very gently together. So I'm just taking my thumb and pulling very lightly those pieces of clay together. Now the reason why it's a very light touch is because if I press too hard, I'm going to lose all my textures. The textures are on the other side, and I will actually be pressing them away and flattening them out if I'm not really careful. So I kind of cup the bowl in my hands like this, and with my thumbs, I press out the clay. Now, if you're using a very large bowl, it might be easier to use your fingers. A smaller bowl, I think thumbs are a little bit easier. And when I get towards the center of the bowl, it's easier to put my whole hand in and use my fingers. Now, this is how far you should get in one class period. It's going to be kind of rough when you put it away. That's okay. The goal here is to get all of the pieces connected. And if you happen to have a spot that looks a little bit weak, take some really super moist clay, thin it out, and press it in. Like I've got a spot there that looks like a little opening might be showing through. So I take a little bit of extra clay, really thin, and press it neatly in place. Now, once again, I'm looking at my top edge to make sure the clay does go all the way to the edge. I'm pressing to make sure there's no really big cracks, because a big crack might get bigger. And I'm not too concerned about getting it very smooth. My concern right now is just simply getting my clay connected, all the pieces connected together so that it looks like one big piece on the inside. Once you've gotten to that point, you're ready to store your clay for the next class. So you're going to take the plastic bag, pull the edges up, and you're going to simply push the edges of this plastic bag gently into the clay bowl. Try to get all the air out. If you have one chunk of leftover clay, just kind of wad it up and put it in the middle to hold it in place. And these will be, oops, got a little piece of clay on the bottom there. These are going to be stored in your tote trays. So your bowl will go in your tote tray. Nobody else will use the tote tray but you, so it should be there when you come back during your next class. Thanks, and have fun creating your bowls, and I'll see you later.